glad to see you here at the Harvest of History. My name is Peter Wade Depp, and my family's lived around these parts, well, since the pioneer days. When I was a young man, I married a young girl named Lucy Ellen Eubank from Freedom. I was born in 1860, and as a young man I had a lot of courage and energy, and that led me to driving an old stagecoach. You can kind of see the wheels of one right there. And I drove the stagecoach from Glasgow Junction all the way over to Mammoth Cave, that 10-mile trek over some really rough dirt and muddy roads. I even had an encounter with Jesse James one time. The stagecoach I drove, the model was an old Florida double-decker made out of Concord, New Hampshire, and it would sit 32 people. It would take up to 6 mules to carry it back and forth to Mammoth Cave. And my whip that I used, I kept my entire life. The stem was about, 3 feet long, a little bit bigger than that. But the whip part was 16 feet of braided deer hide. And when I cracked that over them horses, well, I'd say it was like a 6-cylinder spark plug of the 80s, the 1880s. After my stagecoach driving days, I ended up becoming the Metcalfe County Court Clerk. And I did that a spell. Then after that, I decided I was going to join the land rush out west. And so my family and I, we went out to Kansas to stake claim to some land. And we lived in a dugout. And if you don't know what that is you just dug it out of the dirt and that's where you lived. And it was tough living, but one of my daughters was even born there. And while I was there, I got to be pretty good at inventing things. And one of the things that I helped fabricate was a wheat thrashing combine, one of the first of its kind around there. Well, we got homesick and decided to come back to this area, and I made another wheat thrashing combine around here, and it just fascinated the people. But you know what? I was probably better known for my electrical work. You can see some of it right here. The government hired me to put electricity in the new Capitol building they were building up in Frankfort in the early 1900s. I was better known for being the head electrician over in Eddyville at a prison they had over there. In 1910, the government asked me to build an electric chair. So I did. I went back to my home in Summershade, and over a few months, course time, I built the electric chair, and I traveled it over there to Eddyville and installed it just in time for a young man, 18 years old from Marion County, James Buckner, to be electrocuted in it. And because I was the head electrician, I had to be the one to throw the switch. There was only one back then, so I knew when I threw it, I was putting 2,100 volts into the condemned. I can't say that I liked that job, but it had to be done, and I was not one to walk away from responsibility. My design on the electric chair, my original one had metal that went around the wrists and around the ankles and around the shoulders. But over some time, I noticed it was doing a lot of damage to the condemned skin during the process, so I changed it to leather. They say that over 162 men were electrocuted in that chair between 1911 and to as late as 1997. Of course, that was long after I was gone. But you know what? I was also known for not only building an electric chair, but my carving. I was pretty good about carving, anything from a table, chair, kitchen utensil, what have you. But I was best known for carving a little miniature stagecoach. And people took a liking to it so much, I want you to know they displayed it in the World's Fair. Something I was mighty proud of. I was always known to have my pocket knife, my lucky half-silver dollar, and my pocket watch. Well, I'm seeing I'm running out of time here. Well, let me just tell you this. My life had a lot of interesting twists and turns, and I had to make a lot of hard decisions, just as I'm sure you all have and will in the future. I just hope when your days are done, you can say that your life counted and that the adventures you experienced made a difference for the better, like mine.
Good evening. It is with great pleasure that I stand before you tonight to tell my story in words. I am Miss Wyoming Brewer President, and I was a teacher in Metcalfe County in a one-room school during the 1940s and 50s. One might ask me to describe myself in a few words. I would say dignified, classy, intelligent, loving, thrifty, a motivator, and an educator. I was born February the 16th, 1908 in Knob Lick, Kentucky. My mother was Cynthia Brewer. My father was unknown due to the circumstance in which I was conceived. Like I said before, I grew up on a small farm in Knob Lick, Kentucky. My grandfather, Mr. Eli Brewer, raised me. Well, Mr. Brewer was a farmer, and he expected that we do a little work. Well, I wasn't much of a farmer, but I would take a try at it. So my cousins and I, we dug a hole, and we dumped some green beans over in the hole, and we covered it up. Needless to say, my job was done very quickly, but my grandfather Eli got wind of that very quick. I was raised on the farm along with my cousins, Miss Magaline Brewer, Miss Verna Brewer, and Mr. Fillmore Brewer. At the age of 4, I knew that I wanted to become an educator. After all, I had taught my little cousins a little something about farming. Well, like I said before, I grew up on this farm in Metcalfe County. So that is where my teaching career began. Well, I attended grade school at the Ebenezer Baptist Church School, just a few miles away from my home. I attended high school at the Lincoln Ridge High School, and I attended college at the Kentucky State University. At the age of 19, I began my teaching career. I taught at the Ebenezer School there, and I also taught at the Old Blue Springs School. When I entered my class, I demanded respect. I had 2 quotes on my board. One said, "Do unto others as you would have them to do unto you." And the other one was, "Can't, never, could do anything." Well, my students were very successful, if I'd say so myself. Several of them scored equal or higher as their counterparts that were in the city schools. I was very proud of my students. I loved them. I loved them as if they were my own. One might ask, "Miss President, were you married? Did you have children of your own?" Well, I would like to say this. I was quite a romantic. I was married twice. My first husband was Mr. Finus Garnett. Finus and I did not have any children, but Finus had children of his own and grandchildren. I decided to take on the role as a mother and a grandmother. I treated those children as if they were my own. When they graduated high school, when they graduated college, married, had children of their own, I was there. I supported them. Sadly, our marriage ended in divorce. My second marriage was to the love of my life, Mr. Houston President. I met Mr. Houston President while I was attending college at Kentucky State University. We didn't have any children either. Well, while I was dating Mr. Houston President, I decided I wanted to try out some other careers. So I decided I was going to get my barber license and my beautician license. Mr. Houston and I, we stayed married until his death in 1967. Well, I also decided I was going to buy a little real estate. I bought real estate in Metcalfe County and even in Glasgow. And then I made my way to Hardyville and I bought a grocery store there. You know, I sit and reflect on about all the jobs that I had, and teaching was the greatest reward for me. Well, not only did I love my family and my school children, I also loved my church family. I was a member of the Ebenezer Baptist Church, and right outside the Ebenezer Baptist Church there in Knob Lick, to the right-hand side, is the one-room school in which I taught at. Like I said before, the church was just a couple of miles from my house, so I walked there. I was the church clerk, and I was a Sunday school teacher. One night, Sunday at that, I'd gotten home a little late from night service at church, and I decided it was time for me to lay down. And while I was asleep, I had a vision. I had a vision from the Lord. The Lord spoke to me and he said, "Miss President, I think you should start a quartet at your church." Well, I sat there for a minute and I wondered and I said, you know, I don't know about this. Because, Miss President, myself, I was not much of a singer. But I sure could stand before the church and tell how good the Lord had been to me. Well, I decided I was going to get up that next morning, Monday morning, and I went outside and I cranked up that old Lincoln Continental. Only the best for Miss President. So I got in my car and I trucked on up the highway, and the first house I stopped at was Miss Lula Mae Jones. Miss Lula Mae Jones looked at me as if I were crazy, and I told her it was a vision from the Lord. So she said, if the Lord sent you, then we'll do this. Went on around to the corner, and the next house I went to was Miss Nolan Jones. She agreed to the group as well. Then I went on up the hill and I stopped at Miss Viola Jones's house. She agreed as well. Then I went on down the road and I stopped at Miss Luann Jones's house. Miss Luann Jones quickly agreed, and she had her 14-year-old daughter there. Her daughter was Adeline Jones. Adeline Jones said, well, Mom, I'll join the group. Adeline Jones is the only member that is currently living from that group. The last person she asked was Viola Crenshaw. Viola Crenshaw was the bass singer of the group, and she sure loved to sing. So she immediately agreed to that. Well, our group had been formed. So the next Sunday morning, we told our pastor that we had a song we were going to sing. So we all got up there, and we had already decided and we had practiced. So Viola Jones and Viola Crenshaw got together and they started to tap their feet. And Viola Crenshaw let out that kind of voice. And she sung, Move On Up a Little Higher. And that was by Mahalia Jackson. And that became their theme song. Our group lasted for over 40 years. We were still singing in the 1980s. Well, it was about my time to retire now, so I decided I would move to Louisville, Kentucky. After all, I'd taught there before. I was able to stay in my home there for a while by myself, and then later on I had to be moved to a retirement home. At the retirement home, I would vividly see my students that I had. I loved each and every one of them. I could name them one by one. I died February of 1998 at the age of 90 years old. If you were to go to Noblick, Kentucky today, and you would go to the Ebenezer Baptist Church Cemetery and stand on my grave, you could see in the distance the family farm in which I grew up and lived my blessed life on. I'm going to leave you with this. I truly believe it was God's calling for me to be a teacher. I loved my students one by one. Some of them became successful lawyers, successful educators, successful farmers, and even successful undertakers. But like I said before, I love them. Not only did I teach them something, they taught me something. And I will forever be cherished by that. Thank you all for listening to my story.
Oh, I'm not used to having visitors in the cemetery. I guess I better introduce myself. I'm Colonel Edward Newman Caldwell. Most people in this area know me from the medals I was awarded during World War I. Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, the Purple Heart, the Croix de Guerre, and the Service Medal. Some people say I'm a hero. That's not the way I see it. I'm just a local man who fought for his country and missed his folks back home. As a matter of fact, I wrote my mother a letter. We were fighting in Paris, France. Here, let me read some of it to you. Dear Mom, I really miss her, and I kept this handy so I could keep it by me while we were fighting. Dearest Mother, I know you've been wondering if all's been well with me of late, for I've not been able to write. Not always a lot of time to write when you're in the middle of a battle. I dropped you a line from Paris on my way up here, and the same day I sent my wife a cablegram. The next day I was in the trench commanding a company in the front line. The conditions in the trench are harsh. Your food becomes soggy, your ruined. I'm surprised I don't have trench foot. I've thought of you many, many times, and I know your thoughts and prayers are with me too, for I came through the hell of it unscratched. I wish I could tell you where I've been and what I've done and what I've seen and really what I've felt the last 3 weeks, but it's impossible to begin to even do that. It will require more time than I could spend tonight. Do I really want to tell my mother about battle, about bullets whizzing by and soldiers being wounded? So instead of that, I put a happy spin on things. The experience has been wonderful, though, and actually I'll have more to tell you when I come home with you. I'm now with the Army Division that has been the longest in France and has seen more service than any other troops in the United States. Next month, we will have been here for a year. What an honor to belong to it. We're right up front where the fireworks are thickest right now. Our regiment came out last night, or should I say early this morning, at 3 a.m. and we were 150 yards away from the Boche. The Boche is what the Germans called the French called the German army, and that was our enemy. We dare not show ourselves during the daytime. At night, everyone had to be alert because we could be under attack or a raid. Food could only be brought up to us after dark, so we ate one time a day, and the food was cold. But there was no squabbling over this because we realized this was war, and sacrifices had to be made. I tell you, the folks at home have every reason to be proud of their soldiers. They sure are a game fighting lot, and if we can only get enough men over here, we'll get this war over. I'm proud of my men, love every one of them, and some of them I've just met. They've gone through every test that they could be subjected to like the oldest veteran. They bear the losses of their comrades gamely, they grit their teeth, and they go on. Soldiers form strong bonds. How could you not form strong bonds with someone who's fighting beside you, willing to die for you? I wish you could see the destruction and the desolation of this part of France. It's terrible to contemplate. All the villages for miles are deserted by civil population. Most of them have been practically destroyed by shell fire while up on the famous Verdun section. I saw towns wiped out completely. Buildings looked like they never existed. And shells on the ground everywhere. Pockmarked, immense shell craters. We're all constantly reminded of why we're fighting for the Hun, and believe me, he's gonna pay. Don't worry about me, Mother dear. I'm as well as I can be, as contented as one could be under such conditions. Write to me often, for your letters mean more to me than you can ever imagine. We continue to fight in France. I was wounded by machine gun fire from June of 1917 through September of 1919. I was finally able to come home to my mother and my wife, Laura Collins Caldwell. After my regular time of duty in the military was over, I stayed involved in the local military community. I was involved as the commander of Post 28 in Berrien County, also American Legion in 1940, and I was district commander and department commander of Kentucky. I had 3 brothers who served in the military. Brent Caldwell served in the Army of Occupation of Germany. Lance Caldwell was an air raider, and Jim Caldwell served in the Navy. My father was 101 years old when I died in 1960 at the age of 73.
Good evening. You all startled me a little bit. I've been resting comfortably back there at my grave site for the last 53 years. I've been called back into action these past 2 nights. My name is Carol Ike Ream, And I came to Glasgow in the spring of 1931 with my friend Glenn Ropp, who's buried right back over there where that torch is. Came to Glasgow in 1931 to play baseball. But I'm getting ahead of my story. I was born in March the 28th, 1902 in Oakwood, Ohio. My friend Glenn Ropp lived about 4 miles down the road from me in a little town called Laddie, Ohio. We were boyhood friends. We went to elementary school together. We grew up together, obviously. And when high school time came, we went to school in Paulding, Ohio. This was in the throes of the Great Depression, as you may recall, and it was getting a job or any lively work of any kind was pretty hard in those days. So both of us aspired to be baseball players. I must say Glenn was a better player than I. After high school in a few years, in 1926, Glenn signed a Major League Baseball contract with the Brooklyn Dodgers for $300 a month. Pretty good money back in those days. I must admit, was not as good a player as Glenn. Glenn was a pitcher and I was an infield. And because of our different talents, we went different ways. I played in Class A baseball down in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And I believe that's where I got the nickname Ike. It just stuck with me, I don't know. But then I later played in Elkhart, Indiana, played for the Goshen, Indiana Grays. I played AAA baseball, it was then, for Fort Wayne. I remember distinctly a game in 1930 it was, yeah, where our Fort Wayne team played the Toledo Mud Hens. The player manager for Toledo then was Casey Stengel. In one game in particular, Casey got 1 hit and I got 3. So that's my memory of that. So as I said, times was bad then. My baseball career was kind of waning. Glenn did get another year down in Macon, Georgia, Class A baseball. And he played that season down there very successfully. And on his way back north, he stopped off here in Glasgow, spent the night here, and some people found out he was a baseball player. So they talked him into finishing the season with the Glasgow Bruins. And the Glasgow Bruins played then at a place called the Cavalry Field, where the National Guard Armory today is situated. So as I said, they finished the season and he came on back north to Ohio. And during that winter, he talked me into coming to Glasgow with him. And that was the story on how it came to Glasgow. So we came down, had a good initial season with the Glasgow Bruins. But after the season was over, we both realized that baseball was not going to sustain us year-round. So Glenn got involved with an insurance agency here locally. He went on to become the General Motors Chevrolet dealer, Preston Ropp Chevrolet, you may recall it, right over the way there. I bought a piece of property down on the Jackson Way, south of town. It's now called South Green Street, I'm told. About a 2.5 acre tract. Someone told me there's a Mennonite guy that sells vegetables there today. But that piece of property was originally the fairgrounds for Glasgow. But anyway, I built a small grocery store there, also a filling station, and did very well. You may recall that 31E went right through Glasgow, and that was the main artery, north and south. And it was quite a bit of traffic on it. So like I said, I did pretty good initially with the grocery store, but looking around, I kind of wanted to expand, and I didn't really know what to do until I found north of Cave City, and I'm told that's the state. And built the Wigwam Village. He also built one on North 31E at the intersection of Highway 218 and 31E. And he also built a Wigwam Village in Birmingham, Alabama, also one in Bakersfield, California, but he had a franchising concept, and the poor communications of that era kind of did him in. So I couldn't build wigwams, so I got the idea of building a Dutch mill village. So that's what I did. I built a 3-story large building right up on the Jackson Way there, and it had a windmill that went around, and it was a nice big building. Had a dining room back in the back, and then there were about 6 cabins up on the hill behind, configured like a Dutch mill with windmills that people stayed in. So in those days, people didn't call ahead to make reservations. Instead, they'd drive down the highway till it got dark and started looking for a place to stay. So people would come into the Dutch mill, have a dinner, perhaps spend the night with us, get up in the morning, have breakfast, fill their car up with gas, and off they went. I think you'd agree that's a pretty good marketing concept for today, and perhaps today. I built another Dutch mill about 10 miles north of Glasgow. It still stands or so, up at the intersection of 31E and Highway 7. I also expanded a little bit further. It may have been a downfall, but I bought a hotel here in Glasgow down on the square called the Spotswood Hotel. I also built I didn't build, but I bought a hotel in Red Bowling Springs, Tennessee, called the Palace Hotel. The Palace Hotel was a grand hotel. It was a main building, 2 annex separate buildings to house people, a spa. You see, in those days, Red Bowling Springs was a mecca of sorts for people who believed in the healing powers of mineral waters. And people from Red Bowling Springs, horse and buggies would go to the train station in Cookeville, Tennessee, and bring people back to Red Bowling Springs for the mineral water therapy, if that's what you call it. So that's the way that went. And during my years as a restaurateur in Glasgow, I made acquaintances of several other people you may have heard of. There was a gentleman over in Corbin. His name was Harlan Sanders, and he was a restaurateur. He perfected a way to cook chicken in pressure cookers, and much faster than you could in a skillet. And his wife had some crazy idea about 11 herbs and spices. I don't know how he came out, as I left this earth in 1962. So you may have more of an insight about him than I do. Another friend of mine was a gentleman from over in Bowling Green. Duncan Hines was his name. He stopped by the Dutch mill frequently. He was a food critic. He traveled all over the United States, and he compiled a book called Adventures in Good Eating. And if you bought this book, take it with you on vacation, and whenever you've got some destination, you can stop, consult that book, see where a good place to eat was. The Dutch Mill Village is in that book. So is the Waldorf Astoria in New York City. And I tell people that I don't know if there's ever been another volume of such a book that had the Dutch Mill Village and the Waldorf Astoria in the same volume. I was kind of proud of that. So that concludes my comments. There's one thing I want to tell you. I don't think I'm supposed to tell you this, but at night, after midnight, when it's really quiet, Glenn gets up over there, and we have a game of catch. Thank you all for coming.
Good evening. I'm Virginia Mosier. I know most of the folks that you've seen tonight have talked mostly about themselves, but I'd like to talk to you about my father, Cecil Mosier. Oh, he was still a young man when he passed, only in his mid-30s. Well, I was only 6 years old at the time. March 18th, 1925. Oh, we lived about just a mile west of Beaumont then. Daddy and Mama, my brother Daniel and me. It was a Wednesday evening, about 7 o'clock. We were all at home. The funny thing was, we didn't even know the storm was coming till it was too late to do anything but wait it out. Of course, we've learned so much since then. Why, that storm ripped through 6 states, killed 747 people, and wounded nearly 3,000 more. But I didn't know that then. All I knew was that Daddy was missing, Mama and brother were hurt, and we needed help. Everything happened fast. One minute, we were all in the house together, and the next minute, we were in the garden, and the house was gone. Just gone. Well, I don't have to tell you, I was scared. Mama couldn't walk. We found out later that her hip was broken, and Daniel was crying. One of his legs and both his arms were broken. We couldn't find Daddy at all. I didn't have any broken bones. I was bleeding, but Mama said I had to go get help. Had to go all the way to Granddaddy Mosier's house, more than a mile away. Tell what happened and bring back help. And now I wasn't afraid to go to Granddaddy Mosier's. Why, I'd been there lots of times. But it was so dark, black as midnight. It was raining hard with thunder and lightning. There wasn't any moon or stars, and Mama couldn't go with me. But there wasn't another way. So I ran. I waited for the lightning so I could see where I was going. And I ran until I couldn't see anymore. Then I stopped and waited for more lightning. It was near planting time, and the field between our house and Granddaddy's had been plowed. I ran right into the just turned dirt. But the rain had turned that field into a mud bog. I had to pull my feet up with every step. And then I couldn't pull one of them loose. It was stuck in the mud. I finally got my foot free, but my shoe didn't come with it. And by the time I got out of the field, I didn't have any shoes and only one stocking left. But I kept running. By the time I got to Granddaddy's, my chest felt like it would burst. My legs felt like jelly, and I couldn't go another step. I leaned against the door, and I scratched till they opened up. They brought me inside, and when I could talk, I gave them my message. The storm took our house. Mama and Daniel were hurt bad. We couldn't find Daddy. So Granddaddy rang the dinner bell, and All the neighbors came to see what was wrong, because that's how we did back then. They went to our house, or where it was. The house was gone. They brought Mama and Daniel back to Granddaddy's where they could be looked after. And they found Daddy. But it was too late. He was dead. It was dark. And the weather was bad. If it hadn't been, maybe somebody would have noticed that the Simpsons' house was gone too. Why, the Simpsons only lived about 100 yards from us. But it was dark. And nobody saw until the next morning. Mrs. Simpson, her son Moody, her daughter Olga, Olga's husband James, and their baby Mildred were found dead in the yard where the house stood. So I guess we were pretty lucky. Mama and Daniel and I got better, and the folks in Barron County and Metcalfe County, Allen County, and Adair County cleaned things up. Strange. One of Mama's quilts was found all the way over in Adair County, and it wasn't even dirty. And in a cemetery in Barron County, they found a letter to a Mrs. Eskew, who was killed in the storm. She lived all the way in Gallatin, Tennessee. That letter blew a good 50 miles. Anyhow, that's how we lost my daddy. Part of the deadliest tornado outbreak in U.S. history. Now, you have sirens that warn you when those storms are coming. Always listen. And take care of each other.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so glad that you all got to come tonight, and I could to permit me to tell you a little bit about times that 100 years ago, things that happened in my life, and good things and bad things. My name is James Montgomery Richardson. I was born in Alabama. My dad was a Presbyterian pastor. My mother was just a regular housewife. She just took care of everything. She was originally from Glasgow, and he met her here. She was from the Woods family, prominent family here in Glasgow. He met her here, and they were married. Soon after that, they moved to Mobile, Alabama, and lived there a couple of years ago, and I came along. Graciously, I came along. So everything went good about 4 years. Civil War, the war between the states broke out. And every one of you know about that. It's a terrible, terrible war the country went through, terrible times the country went through. But father was a pastor, but he enlisted in the Confederate Army and served graciously. He did real good. 1859, he was killed in the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain in Georgia. And that changed a lot of things for my family. My mother survived him till 1896, and then she went home to meet her. That left me at 6 years old, and I was sent back to Glasgow to live with an uncle, John D. Woods. He was a doctor, and he took good care of me. He sent me to college. Had a wonderful education, And passed a bar exam, and not one day did I intend to be a lawyer. Not one day was I serving as a lawyer. I came back to Glasgow, and I had two loves in life. One was the Daily paper, and the other was the Democratic Party. That staunch Democrat I was, and I loved every minute of it, all our lives. When I came back from college, I went to work for my uncle at the Daily Times. He owned and edited the Daily Times at that time. I went to work at him, 20 years old. A couple of years later, I loved it so much. I loved to type in a little typewriter like this. I loved it so much that that's what I wanted to do. That was my calling. So I saved up my money first, and 2 years later, I bought Daily Times from my uncle. And he stayed with me a little while to get things worked out, going normal. And went on 2 years later, I married my wife, my gracious, loving wife, Lily Porter Rogers Richardson. She was granddaughter of Edmunds Rogers, survey of this area back in 1900s. I know you people heard of him in history, but she was a very wonderful lady. She good educated lady, very wonderful lady. In our lifetime, we had 7 children raised to be adults. We had 2 little ones that they didn't make it. They didn't make it. One was 4 months old and one was 4 years old. Never be off of your heart when you lose a child like that. It's been with me all my life, and I'll just never forget it. It's a very hard thing to forget. But we raised the 7 children, and they all turned out pretty good. They did decent. We fed them, and I was sent to the National Democratic Convention in Washington. All over the state, I was printing, and people liked my paper, and it was all about the Democratic Party, and I went a long way with that. Came back from the convention, and right back into editing the paper, you know, as normal, having a very wonderful time. 2 years later, I was elected to the prison commissioners in the state of Kentucky. Commissioner of all prisons in the state of Kentucky. Very hard job, very, very touchy job, but it was a good job. And in 1901, I was elected to that job. In 1904, I was elected again to that job. And stayed until 1907. And 1907, I resigned from that job. Became congressman in the 3rd District in the state of Kentucky. Very wonderful job, a lot of strange people. I was in Washington a lot, but I ran for it again. My 2nd term, I didn't make it. That's part of life. You make some things and you fail in others, but I didn't make it the 2nd term. And I just came back to Glasgow. I love this place. I love Barron County. I love Glasgow. I love writing. Whole yard. I love this country down here. So I came back and went right back in my ways of editing and writing, and it was a very good life. I had a competitor here in the Republican Party. His name was William Henry Jones, and he had a newspaper here called The Republican. Mighty fine man. He's well educated, mighty fine man, good man to be around. Pretty serious all the time. But back between the Republican and the Daily Times, we send barbs to each other, just in political barbs. Nothing serious, nothing to hurt anybody, nothing to get anybody upset, but just funny things that we would go with back and forth. Paper. He ran that till one night his paper caught on fire, destroyed the whole building, presses, destroyed everything. And I offered him our presses till he could get back on his feet and get a place built, which he appreciated very much, and he did that. Mighty fine man. We, in 1923, I retired from the newspaper business, and my son Joseph took over. I was associated with it, with the paper, for 45 years. And it was in the Richardson family for 87 years. We enjoyed that very much. But, in 1923, I retired from the paper. I was getting sick, had a lot of illnesses. Wasn't able to go on and do the job that I had loved for so many years. 1925, February the 9th, my sickness and illness caught up with me. I passed away that day. I had lived a wonderful years, a wonderful life, many years with children, people I had met in Barron County, surrounding areas in the state, Congress. And when I was in Congress, President Roosevelt was in there. And he was a Republican, I was a Democrat. But we both had large families, and that sort of broke the stigma between us, and we became friends. And he sent a letter right here and a picture of my wife Luli with all of his children. A letter and wanted her to take one of us and send back to him, which she did. That was one of his prized possessions, or her prized possession, all of her life. This is her picture here on this side. So that's me when I had a lot more hair. Business card I was going to Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to talk to you. And, after 90 years passing away, I'm glad to see anybody.
My name is Sarah Lewis Hall, but everyone calls me Sally. How are y'all tonight? Y'all sound quite dead for so-and-so alive. I'm afraid I do not have much company very often, so I'm a little unprepared. Forgive my lack of hospitality. But during my lifetime, we didn't have much type of hospitality. Mind if I bend your ear for a bit? I was born June 29th, 1849, and from a young age, politics has been a very important part of my life. My father was General Joseph Horace Lewis, and he was a very political man. In 1850 until 1855, he was a member of the Kentucky legislature, and in 1857 and 1861, he ran to join the United States Congress. Unfortunately, they did not elect him, but of course, during those times, the United States was highly ironic. When Mr. Lincoln became president, everything changed. According to the papers, we were a part of the Union, but Daddy said we people of Barron County are loyal Confederates. I remember him traveling back and forth to Cave City recruiting young men for the Army. Some even my age wanted to fight. Of course, the war was not a pleasant time. Hundreds of thousands died, many of injuries and diseases I can't even bear to imagine. I hear today you have medicine that could have helped them. I'm afraid now it's a little too late for that. They're a little deep. But when the war ended, the South was in ruins, and so was my daddy. He had fought so hard, but in the end he had lost. Have you ever heard of the Orphan Brigade? Father was their leader during the Missionary Ridge and the Atlanta campaign, leading 5 infantry regiments and 2 artillery batteries. Quite impressive if you ask me. My brother Jack and cousin Asa even served in the Orphan Brigade. Unfortunately, when Asa went home to plant the spring crop, he was executed by Mr. General Braxton Bragg. I never did like that man after that. Jack made it home all right, though. After the war, my father continued his law profession and law politics. He served in the Kentucky legislature and even went on to the House of Representatives. After many more political positions that even bore me, he retired to a farm in Scott County. Of course, when the war is over, we women have much more important things to focus on. Politics, artillery, no. Clothes. Everyone needs a pair of clothes. I hear today you go to this, Walmart and buy your clothes ready-made. Far too simple. We had to make the fabric ourselves and put it all together. My brothers hated getting new clothes. You would set them up on the stool, hold them down if they were too wiggly, pin the fabric on them, cut away the excess. Of course, they still weren't staying still and the pins would prick quite often. But boys will be boys. If only they could just be a girl for just a minute. It won't take long. But on July 12, 1870, I was finally married. I married Mr. Joseph G. Hall. I was so excited to start a family of my own. To prepare myself for my new life, I read Dr. George H. Nafi's book, The Physical Life of Women. It gave all the proper advice on courting and marriage and, of course, pregnancy. He said a young mother-to-be must not worry about giving birth, or else such a disaster may occur. So, I did my best to stay calm and not worry too much. He also said that a young mother-to-be must avoid images of sickliness and ugliness, or such a state may befall the baby. I did my best there too. But the worst part of pregnancy would have to be the maternity clothes. It's very difficult to attend a social event when the only thing you wear is a simple Mother Hubbard dress, which, if you're not familiar with such an item, it is more or less a nightgown with a slightly nicer collar. Very distasteful. Of course, we would add belts of fine embroidery to add some sense of taste. More of a preservation, really. But on October 5th, 1870, I finally went into labor. Pregnancy is not easy, especially if it's 1870. Women were expected to suffer because of the curse of Eve. Surely you've read about it in Genesis, of course. And they also said the pain would make the mother love their baby more. But I could not imagine loving my baby any more than I did. Luckily, the midwife had some chloroform to give me, and it helped ease the pain. And when I woke, there was my baby boy. We named him Joseph after his father. There was just one problem, though. He wasn't crying. And he wasn't moving. He never did. And so the next day, October the 6th, we had to bury him. I never did fully recover. The labor had been quite difficult. And I was very depressed. 2 weeks later, they buried me right over there, next to my father and my baby boy. But it's all right now. I get to spend all my days as my little Joseph. I'd hoped his father would join us here, but he has since remarried and moved on. But I just have my darling boy all to myself. Oh my, it's getting quite late. I'm afraid little Joey's going to be getting hungry soon, and I do not wish him to starve. He can get quite persistent when he isn't fed on time. Have a wonderful evening.